Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Balker here to another Amplify lesson with you guys. Today we're going to go ahead and go over Unit 8A, Subunit 2, Lesson 9. It's the last one in this bit. It's called Experiments and Revision, the Power of Dialogue. So what is it about? Okay, well, here's the thing. We've talked about the difference between showing and telling lots and lots of times. And of course, we want to use showing as much as we can, right? We know that there's a time to tell. We need to be clear with facts. We don't want people to misunderstand us. But by and large, if we can use showing, we're going to end up with a lot stronger writing. We're going to have a lot happier of a reader. They're going to be a lot more involved. And so one of the best ways to really get showing into your writing is dialogue. And we've talked about this already just a little bit, but we've got some really good examples here. So first of all, we're going to go back to Roald Dahl's book. And this is the book that we're going to read next unit. Okay, the whole thing is this book, so this is just kind of a little introduction. By and large, most of our writing done so far has been you guys talking about your own experiences, right? Biography, autobiography specifically, where you're talking about, hey, this is what I did, this is what I feel. Roald Dahl's story, Going Solo, is what he did. It's an autobiography of his events as he recalls them. And he uses dialogue a lot to talk about how somebody acts, how he feels about somebody, and to put you inside his mindset. So let's go ahead and go to this first thing right here, okay? First Impressions is the name of the section here. And what they're talking about in First Impressions is Roald Dahl meets Miss Trefusis. And we've talked about her already, okay? We've talked about Miss Trefusis. She's the lady who eats the orange in the maybe unusual manner, shall we say. And so he uses dialogue in that specifically to give you this really pointed opinion about how he feels about her. So I'm going to go ahead. Okay, so here we're going to go ahead and just read this out loud. I'm going to hit play and it's going to read it aloud to you. Just keep up.
She was eating an orange at the time, and I noticed suddenly that she was not eating it in the normal way. In the first place, she had speared it from the fruit bowl with her fork instead of taking it in her fingers. And now, with knife and fork, she was making a series of neat incisions in the skin all around the orange. Then, very delicately, using the points of her knife and fork, she peeled the skin away in 8 separate pieces, leaving the bare fruit beautifully exposed. Still using knife and fork, she separated the juicy segments and began to eat them slowly, one by one with her fork. "Do you always eat an orange like that?" I said. "Of course." "May I ask why?" "I never touch anything I eat with my fingers," she said. "Good Lord, don't you really?" "Never. I haven't since I was 22. "Is there a reason for that?" I asked her. "Of course there's a reason. Fingers are filthy." "But you wash your hands." "I don't sterilize them," Miss Trefusis said. "Nor do you. They're full of bugs. Disgusting, dirty things, fingers. Just think what you do with them." I sat there going through the things I did with my fingers. "Doesn't bear thinking about, does it?" Miss Trefusis said. "Fingers are just implements. They are the gardening implements of the body, the shovels and the forks. You push them into everything." "We seem to survive," I said. "Not for long, you won't," she said darkly. I watched her eating her orange, spearing the little boats one after the other with her fork. I thought the fork wasn't sterilized either, but I kept quiet. "Toes are even worse," she said suddenly. "I beg your pardon?" "They're the worst of all," she said. "What's wrong with toes?" "They are the nastiest part of the human body," she announced vehemently. "Worse than fingers?" "There's no comparison," she snapped. "Fingers are foul and filthy, but toes are reptilian and viperish. I don't wish to talk about them."
Okay, a couple things I want to point out. First of all, when you're reading along and you see words that you don't know, most of the time, the words that you don't know are going to be blue. And if you click on them, it's going to pull up the translation to give you a word that you may know. So vehemently, that word means forcefully. I really encourage you as you're reading along with this, hit those and try to learn those words. Those of you that are doing a lot of the vocabulary, you're going to notice these are the same words. They come up and they're trying to make sure that you know what they are. The second thing is I want to talk about the actual use of dialogue here. What a great conversation that was, right? You know, when you're sitting here reading this and you're listening along with him, what do you think he thinks about her? I mean, he thinks she's crazy, right? I mean, he seems definitely surprised, But he's trying to be pretty low key, right? He's not trying to get in her face and say, hey, lady, you are nuts. He's basically just sitting there like, okay, all right. We've been in spots like that. You've met somebody that you're just thinking, what in the world is going on here? Well, that's how he feels about her. And he shows that really effectively through the dialogue. You know, when he specifically talks about how we seem to survive, talking about using our fingers, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward sentence, right? Like, I mean, I get it. They're probably not the cleanest, but we're getting by. And she says, not for long you won't. What a statement. But he's not, freaking out at her. He's not yelling at her. I just thought it was a really good dialogue. So on the second card here, he talks about how he wraps it up with her being, quote, Dottie. Now, we're not there yet. He hasn't actually talked about it. But what they want you to do is highlight a couple of times that you see in here that she's Dottie. What do they mean by Dottie? They mean crazy, okay? And he definitely seems to feel that. On the second thing, you want to see the way that he responds to her. So first he observes her being a little bit, again, Dottie. And then he responds to her in certain ways. He tries to be a little disarming, but he also tries to put an opinion out there. And then the third line right here, it says, what do you think he feels about her? Okay? From how he reacts to her, does that show you what he thinks of her? And yeah, I think it certainly does. So that's what you need to do on the second slide there, okay? All right, so when we're done with the second slide, go ahead and go to the third. And the third is kind of just a quick thing of highlighting. And here's what I want you to do. In this piece that he's got, you want to highlight in red the dialogue that stands out the best to you. Like, I liked when he said or she said this, and make that red. I want you to find a piece of showing in here, where he's showing you what's going on rather than telling you, okay? Do that in orange. In yellow, do the bit that you think is the best telling, the most effective, the most clear, to be sure that we don't have any misunderstanding. I want you to show action, something happening, in green, and then I want you to pick a strong verb, the best strong verb you see, and put that in blue. That's all you have to do is highlight 5 things. It's a piece of cake. The point here is we want to remember these for later because, again, you're going to use this text a lot. Okay, slide number 4. Here's what we're doing here. We have a little story that might seem familiar to you. It's the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Okay? This is a very long example of just telling. Okay? Once upon a time, there was a girl who was loved by everyone who knew her. But most of all by her grandmother, who gave her a beautiful cape of red wool, which suited her so well that she never wore anything else. Notice, this is all telling. And there's nothing wrong with that. It gets our point across. We know what they're talking about here. What we want to do here is to pick somewhere in this and add a few lines of dialogue. And the reason we want to use the dialogue is we want to show how Little Red Riding Hood feels, right? We know that she loves her beautiful cape. It says right there that she loves it. Show me her loving it. Maybe when she takes it out of the closet, like, oh, I can't wait to put on this cape. This is my favorite cape. Grandma gave me this cape. That's dialogue. Even if you're talking to yourself, that's still sort of dialogue. It's called a monologue because you don't have an audience. Same idea. And you can express emotion and feeling. And you see this in television, right? We've all seen YouTubes and regular TV shows where the person will look to the camera or say something to themselves. But the reason it's in there is they want to share it with the audience. That's what you're doing. So add a little bit of showing in here with Little Red Riding Hood, okay? We're almost done with the lesson already. Here's what you have to do. I like card number 6, slide number 6. Revise lesson 7. In lesson 7, I gave you the story about whenever I got the awards at my elementary school. That was a great day, right? Here you get to revise that writing. I know that you've done it because it was not that long ago and it should be fresh in your mind. All we want to do is describe what was going on, how you felt, what it looked like. and add some vivid details. If you want to use dialogue to illustrate those details, super. But more than anything, what we want to do is add more detail, flesh out this moment more. You know, in my example, I talked about how I was really uncomfortable that people were laughing, right? But then later on, I realized, wait a minute, they're not laughing at me. They're kind of on my side. Vivid details like that is what I want you to do. That's it. This is the bulk of the grade. I'm going to look at the other stuff and make sure that you've done it. As long as you've done it, you're going to get your full 10 points. I hope this was an easy one for you guys, and I will see you guys really, really soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.